All right. Well, it's good to see everyone here again this week. Last week was a little nuts, with the rain and weather alerts being sent out. I don't know if you got any of those. It was great. Went off in the first service. But this week, we're in the second part of a series called Summer Love. Summer Love. We're looking at some bad lessons or unrealistic lessons, some not so great lessons that are taught in great movies. And here's the issue with these movies, right? Like a lot of times we get so into it, we get so into the story and the characters that we miss the fact that a lot of this doesn't translate to real life. Last week I told you about Aladdin, right? In the beginning I was like, well, if you've ever seen Aladdin, basically it opens up, Aladdin is caught stealing and he meets Jasmine, and before you know it, they're running the streets of Agrabah, and he's ready to jump off of a building. They've just met. He turns around, looks at her, he's like, "Do you trust me?" And the answer is no, Aladdin. No, that's nuts. Like, all I know is that you steal. That's it. But no, we're like, "Do it, Jasmine. Yeah, trust him." And she does, and yay, right? And the movie goes on. And some of them are like that. Others of them just don't translate to real life. They're like more like silly things. Every once in a while, Allie and I will watch some movie, some love story when she picks the movie. And there'll be some scene where a guy will do something and it's so romantic and over the top, like he's outside of the window, second story window, and he's singing or whatever, and I'll look over and she's enjoying it, and sometimes just to maybe be a grump, I'll just be like, if I did that when we were dating, you'd say I was creepy, right? Like, there are things that really, if we saw them, we'd be like, what is going on there? And so there are some little things, but then there are some big things, and there's some big things that often aren't stated, but there are these huge themes that enter into our understanding of relationships. And often they come from movies or stories that we're very familiar with. Last week we talked about Cinderella, which is a classic, but the theme is in all sorts of movies. There's this idea, we called it the glass slipper. The glass slipper. If you know the story of Cinderella, there's this prince that goes looking and he finds her and the shoe fits. Thankfully, she doesn't have the same size foot as her sisters. And then she becomes who she was made to be. The glass slipper is the idea that a relationship will complete me. And the problem with that is that really, if that's the case, then if you're not with your other half, if you haven't found your other half, then you can't feel whole. And at that point, what we're doing is really expecting a relationship to be the solution to a problem. The glass slipper makes relationships the solution to problems within us. Bigger, deeper problems. We took it a step further and said, really, often when you have this idea of finding fulfillment in a relationship, of becoming whole or who you were made to be because of a person, you're asking the relationship, specifically the person in the relationship, to do something for you that really only God can do. And we went into the details of what that looked like, but the main question we asked was, with the way you see relationships, whether you're in one or not, do you see it as a desired addition, a valuable addition, but in addition, or is it the solution? Like, this is what's gonna make me whole. This is gonna solve the deep internal problems within me. And if you go into a relationship like that, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and putting too much pressure on the relationship. But it all comes back to this idea that when I find the one, I'll find the right to my left, my other half. So this week, we're looking at another classic story with a classic theme that shows up over and over again. If you were with us last week, you know that when I introduced the story, I summarized it a little bit, but to keep everybody together, we also did some trivia. And we're gonna do the same thing again today, because who doesn't like trivia, okay? The 8:30 service, that's who didn't like trivia. Anyway, so we're talking today about Beauty, don't tell them. Beauty and the Beast. All right, that's our story. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the story, when it first starts, we meet this girl named Belle, and she's just everything you'd think she would be. She's nice, she's sweet, she's humble, she sings, she loves to read, she's just the best, and you love her right away when you meet her. Now, she's part of a very small family. We really only get to know her dad. Her dad, first question, what's the name of Belle's father? Anybody know? Yes, Maurice, very good. So we meet Maurice. Maurice is a nice guy. He loves his daughter, but sometimes he doesn't make the best decisions. And to make a long story short, he ends up getting himself in trouble and becomes a prisoner in this castle deep in the woods. And we find out pretty quickly that this castle is under a curse that has everyone in there not in their original state, right? So there's a prince who's a beast. And then there's other people that worked in the castle, and they're just objects and furniture for whatever reason. Does anyone know the name of the clock in the castle? They still talk. Yes, Cogsworth is the name of the clock. Well, so this castle's under a curse, and Belle goes out to try to save her dad, find her dad, and there ends up effectively being this swap, where now Belle's in the castle, and Maurice is out. And she's under the rule of the beast, this big, angry, hairy beast. But then all of a sudden the vibe starts to change a little bit, you know. He takes a shower. He puts on a nice blue coat. They basically have a little date in the castle. And there's a big dance, you know, classic scene with the song that's been stuck in my head all week, by the way. Who sings while Belle and the Beast are dancing? Mrs. Potts, or Angela Lansbury. Yeah. Also, Ariana Grande and John Legend, in case you haven't heard the redone version. It's pretty good. Yeah, okay. So, and all of a sudden, they fall in love. And the curse is broken. Now, I kind of just gave the answer away here, but does anyone know what needed to happen? What the beast needed to learn to break the curse? Anybody know? Yeah, okay. To love and be loved. That's what he needed to learn. And he did. He fell in love. He accepted Belle's love, and he was changed. Now, throughout the movie, there's this thing that symbolizes how much time the beast has to break the curse. He's told that if he doesn't break the curse by his 21st birthday, he'll be a beast forever. And he's given this thing. It's not a calendar. It's, anyone know? Okay, so we know. All right, so last week I had a glass slipper. Here, just kidding. This week, thank you, we have a rose. And you see in the movie every once in a while a petal will fall off of the rose, and it symbolizes the amount of time that the beast has left to change. And so for the sake of what we're talking about today and in this series, the rose for us, it symbolizes the hope that he'll change. We love this. We love this. There's this idea in the movie. You're rooting for it. You know from the start he's got to change, and hopefully Belle's love will change him. The relationship will change him. This is a theme we see in all sorts of movies, right? Where there's this, it's usually the guy, for whatever reason, who's some kind of a beast. And the relationship changes him. You know, Pride and Prejudice, it's a story like that. Phantom of the Opera, a story like that. Grease is a story like that. There's this guy, he's got some issue, but he'll change. He can change. She sees the potential in him, and he'll change. We love that. We hope for that. We root for it. We celebrate it. It's amazing. And let me be the first to say, as a church, we celebrate change. We look for change. We root for change. We pray for change. There's this idea of transformational love that we see in these movies, and we believe in that wholeheartedly. That God loves us in such an enduring way that it has the ability to change us. And that everything we do is not the requirement for that love. You might have heard me say this before, but it's the response to it. And it has this way of changing what's going on within us when we respond to everything that Jesus has done for us. We believe in that wholeheartedly. But the idea that your love for someone can change them in a romantic relationship, or simply the hope that they will change, creates all sorts of issues. And it creates an issue when you're dating and not with someone, and when you're married and you're with someone. It's two different issues, but they have the same solution. And if we'll take a hard look at this, I think you'll see this is maybe not the easiest, but the clearest and most effective way to bring about health, or at least a measure of health in your relationship. You see, the problem, if you're single, if you're dating, if you're not married, there's this hope that he'll change. And maybe you get together and he's cute or she's cute. It's also the hope that she'll change, right? It works both ways. I'm just using he because we're talking about a beast. But things work, and maybe you make each other laugh and you have fun together. And there's what we would call chemistry. You just click. It just works. But along the way, you see some red flags. Maybe there's some major character issues. Maybe it was an issue in his last relationship. Maybe it's an issue your parents have seen or your friends see, but it's an issue of character. And if we're not careful, because there's this hope that he'll change, that he can change, that I'm praying for him, I'm wanting him to change, and there's chemistry there, we can let the chemistry allow us to deal with issues of character or overlook issues of character simply because there's chemistry there. And can he change? Can she change? Yes. But it's not something you should go into a relationship or into a marriage banking on. When I was in high school, or when I was in college, I coached a high school team. And it wasn't this like amazing league, you know, the level of play was not super high. It was a basketball team. And I ended up being their coach, and I had fun with these guys. And there was this one guy who didn't really play very much. He didn't really seem to enjoy it, but for some reason was on the team. And I'd watch him in practice, and he couldn't really shoot, couldn't really dribble. He wasn't a great passer, and he didn't play great defense. So, you know, I kind of, didn't have a lot going for him on the court. But he was like a brick wall. And I don't know when I realized this. Maybe I bumped into him, but he was just immovable. Just a body, and solid. And so one day I took him aside in practice. I was like, all right, here's what I want you to do. Whenever the other team gets the ball, find our basket, the one you're defending, run to it as fast as you can, just get under it, forget where your man, forget where the ball is, just get under the basket, stand there, put your hands up. And just be a body. Just forget everything else. And he's like, all right. And he started doing it, and I saw potential in him. If I could pat myself on the back here, and I called it out of him, and I helped him see the value he could bring, how his presence on the court could totally change. And if you're a coach, that's a really good thing. But if you're looking to spend the rest of your life with someone, that's a really bad approach. You should never marry someone's potential because of what they could be. And you have to be careful that the narratives we hear in movies that we watch, the hope that will change, and even if you're a church person, the fact that you believe in genuine change, you have to be careful that that doesn't help you or cause you to overlook major issues of character. really some issues or some questions you need to ask if you're dating someone and you've got these issues and you see these issues of character. The question you should ask yourself is, am I willing to live with this forever? Because it may never change. And often, once a dating relationship becomes a marriage relationship, the motivation to change is gone. And I've seen relationship after relationship not make it because, well, yeah, I saw that when we were dating, but I was hoping we'd make some progress. I was hoping he would change. I was hoping she would change. I thought she'd grow out of it. Am I willing to live with this forever? And if you are, the next question you need to ask is, do I want my kids to live with this forever? If he's got an issue with rage, if he's shown a serious lack of discipline, if she can't control the words that come out of her mouth when she's angry, do I want to raise children in a home like this? And I'm not saying you shouldn't pray for change, but if you're dating someone, you need to take these red flags seriously and not bank that on the prince being beneath the beast, because it can create a world of problems. If you're married, the rules of the game change a little bit. If you believe what I believe, and I know not everybody does, but if you believe what I believe, we try to make this a forever thing. You know, the whole for better or for worse, till death does us part. And so, the belief that one day he'll change, when that belief enters into a marriage, the belief now becomes he's the problem. That's why he needs to change. Or if she needs to change, then she's the problem. And so we develop a posture, a habit, a reflex of finding fault in the other side of the relationship way more than we find it in ourselves. Because we were hoping that he would change and he hasn't, and now the ball's in his court. It's out of my control. The health of our relationship cannot improve because it's on him to do it. It's on her to do it. I was hoping she'd get over this, but she hasn't. And so now I can't do anything about it. It's a helpless feeling when the ball's completely in their court. We are so, if you're like most people, we tend to be the most critical of the people that we're closest with. And so we could just become so quick to like, yes, I said that, but do you realize what you did? I know I finished it, but you started it. And it becomes this ongoing system, tendency, because, well, he's the problem. She's the problem. And you may not say that, but if you were to stop and think, honestly, what needs to change in the relationship? The average person, I'm not saying it's you, but the average person is thinking about what needs to change on the other side. So what do? It's the same answer on both sides. I know it's taken us a while to get there, but Jesus actually addressed this. And it wasn't in the context of relationships. And you might have heard this before. It's one of those things, one of those passages that might be familiar to you if you've been in the church for a while. But think about this in the context of relationships. Jesus says to a crowd and to his closest followers, he says, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye? He used the word brother here to talk about people in a community, people that you're close with. And so this absolutely would include your spouse. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye and you pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? He's using an analogy here, a metaphor with wood. There's a dot and there's a 2x4. And you see the dot, and you look beyond the 2x4 in yourself. I find it interesting how he asks, like, he doesn't just say, don't do it. He starts off, he's like, why? Why? Like there's part of this that's literally within your reach, your ability to control. And then there's another part of it that's the ball's in their court. And so why not at the very least start with what you can control? He goes on here, he says, how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your own eye? Let me point out the problem that you have. Let's talk about the issue that you're bringing to the table. And he says, when all the time there's a plank in your own eye. You've got your own issues and plenty of them, and you know them better than anyone else does. He says, you hypocrite. Now this sounds like he's just name calling here, but at that time the word hypocrite, it was simply the word for an actor, someone who wears a mask and pretends to be something or someone that they're not. He's saying, stop playing games here. First, take the plank out of your own eye. Start with yourself, and then you'll be able to see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. What he's addressing here is the tendency all of us have. All of us have. Maybe you've totally conquered this, but at some point this was a tendency for you. It's a tendency to make it about them. There's a problem and it's your fault. It's not my fault, it's yours. Like, do you know what she said to me? What he said to me? Maybe it wasn't nice, and maybe that's an issue. But maybe there's a deeper thing, maybe it's even a bigger thing that's causing you to hear what they're saying in that way. And so Jesus is saying, like, what if our first step, our first reflex in all of our relationships, so if you're tired of hearing about romantic relationships, think about work, think about your extended family, think about your neighbors. Like, what if our first step was not to make it about them, but to make it about you? Saying start with yourself. Like, okay, he said that, she said that. Why did that hit me the way that it did? Why do I feel so disrespected? Is there a deeper need here? Can I not handle being spoken to a certain way? Now, am I misinterpreting this? Why do I feel slighted? Is there an issue of pride here? Why do I feel challenged? Like, what's going on in the mirror? He's saying start there. And if you're like me, this especially needs to start at home, where it's easiest to go pointing the finger and wiping the speck out of someone else's eye. Rather than starting with, okay, like, why? Why do I feel the way I do? Why is there a problem? And think about it. If it's let's say it's 90% their fault and 10% yours. Well, you've got the opportunity to make things 10% better. And what's amazing is that this is the more effective way. Not only because 10% is in your ability to control, but because if you start with your part of the pie, however big it may be, maybe it's more like 50, 70, or 80, you start there, you watch how the other side is more willing to take a step in your direction and own their own issue. But when you come flying in with your finger to wipe the speck out of their eye, all of a sudden people pull back because no one likes to have a hand in the face. So he's saying, start with you. Start here. I heard someone ask this question, it's not my own. But he said, what if we started asking, like, as we were going into situations, what if we asked, what's it like to be on the other side of me? What does this conversation sound like from across the table? What does it feel like when I come home? What does it feel like when I pick up the phone? What's that like? Start with you. Start here, Jesus would say. Instead of constantly finding the problem over there. It's not to say that there isn't a plank in their eye. It's not to say they're not at fault. But he's saying there's a place where you can start. And then he says, first, and then, just watch. Just watch how your apology leads to someone else owning something else. Now, of course, of course, like whenever we talk about this, there are extremes in relationships. Marriages can be toxic places. There can be abuse of all different kinds. And if that's the situation, I'm not talking to you. If you're in an abusive situation, you should get help or get out. But for the most part, with 99% of our circumstances, starting with yourself, go a long way. And so that's if you're married. If you're dating, or you're hoping one day to be with someone, the same thing applies. To make it about you. You know what that looks like when you're not with someone, but maybe you hope to be one day? It's not simply asking, what kind of person am I looking for? Like, who out there do I want to be with? What do I want my future husband, wife to look like? It's taking it a step further, or bringing it back in your direction and asking, am I the kind of person that the person I'm looking for is looking for? And think about that. I'm not just saying like, don't look for a good person, be a good person. I'm saying, no, really, put some thought into this. If you're looking for the kind of person who values their faith, right? You can bet that person is looking for someone who values their faith. And if you don't, things aren't going to line up. If you're looking for a person with certain standards in whatever area of life, they're also looking for a person with those kind of standards. Do you have those standards? It's sure, recognizing what kind of person you want to be with, that's a legitimate thing to think about and ask, especially before you meet them. But then be thinking, okay, how can I use this time of life to become that kind of person? And what you'll see, again, there's an unbelievably practical side to this. You will begin to naturally attract the kind of people you're looking for because you're thinking about it. Without going into all the details, I think it's worth saying your activity online, all of your social media accounts, whatever you're doing, whatever you're saying, it is attracting certain people. And it's also repelling other kinds of people. You just want to make sure it's attracting the right ones. Have you thought about that? Am I the kind of person that the person I'm looking for is looking for? It starts with making it about you. So here's my challenge for you. And you can take it or leave it. If you're single, or if you're dating, if you're not married, what I want you to do is really think about the kind of person you want to be with. And think about if you're the kind of person that person hypothetically is looking for. In detail, like think about some traits. If you're with someone right now, dating them, and there are some major red flags. I know this isn't easy, but I think you need to ask yourself, am I willing to live with this forever? Before you move forward with the relationship. And if you're married, what if for 7 days, all right, till next Sunday, what if you decided not to reach at all for a speck in the eye of your partner? To not point out anyone negative thing for 7 days. What I think you'll see more than anything is, one, it is extremely difficult. And two, you'll see your tendency to so quickly, well, yes, I did this, but do you know why? And it's boom, it's right back at you. It's a reflex. It's a posture we tend to walk around with. Maybe not everybody. If that's not you, God bless you. But we tend to make it about them. And so what if for 7 days, just 7, we tried to start with ourselves every time there was a moment of conflict to deal with our slice of the pie?